On the edge of town, where the fields begin to forget the roads, Brinn woke up already apologizing to the mirror. She always did, rehearsing her smile, her tone, the exact rhythm of her greeting like it might save her. Her bedroom was tidy, almost sterile, the kind of place where silence settled and stayed. She tried on 3 different sweaters before settling on one, a pale blue that she hoped made her look soft, kind, harmless. Downstairs the kettle hissed, but she didn't drink the tea. She spent too long practicing a friendly morning in the mirror by the front door. Her voice kept cracking. On the front lawn something was wrong, a perfect circle of scorched earth carved into the grass. She froze when she saw it. But then, as always, she talked herself down. Probably a prank, a lightning strike, something simple. She moved on. She drove her old hatchback toward town, a loop of cheerful music playing quietly through one working speaker. On the way, she passed her neighbor, Mr. Halvers, standing in his driveway. She gave him a bright wave and a "good morning," her best take yet. He didn't even blink, just turned away and went inside. At the town mailbox, she paused, a pale yellow envelope in her hand. She dropped it in. It was addressed, as always, to Ma Collins. She knew it wouldn't be read, but she wrote them anyway. Brinn wandered to the graveyard. It was quiet except for the wind rattling old oak branches. She knelt by her mother's grave and smoothed out the grass. "Hi, Mom," she whispered, trying the whole optimistic thing today. Her voice barely registered in the air. A few headstones down, she spotted a couple of townsfolk. She didn't know their names, and tried another greeting. They ignored her. One of them stepped sideways like she was contagious. And then she saw them. The Collins. Ma's parents. They were visiting a grave too. Brinn's body stiffened. She turned quickly and walked the long way home. Back at the house, Brinn went through her usual ritual, removing her shoes exactly by the door, checking the locks 3 times, writing another letter. This one was longer than most. She told Ma she saw her parents, told her how the grave looked, told her she missed her so much it sometimes came out as noise in the middle of the night. At the very end, she added a line she hadn't written before. "I don't think I'll ever be able to forgive myself." She stopped and stared at it for a long time. Photos lined the wall. Brinn and Ma through the years. Playgrounds, costumes, birthdays, always smiling, always together. She lingered on one of them, her fingers ghosting over it. Then she moved on to her nighttime routine. Dinner was a romantic meal for one. Candles, music. She poured a glass of wine and toasted nothing in particular. After eating, she danced alone in the living room, slow at first, then fast, like she was trying to sweat out the silence. At midnight, she curled up on the couch under a heavy quilt, the rest of the house dark. At 3:17 a.m., the air changed. A low mechanical hum swept through the house. The lights flickered on without warning, every bulb surging. The old television screamed static. Lamps, radios, even the toaster. They all came alive. Brinn sat bolt upright, heart pounding. Then, as suddenly as it began, everything turned off. Total black. Then came the crash of metal. Her trash cans outside. "Probably a raccoon," she muttered, but her voice was shaky. She reached for the hallway light. Nothing. No power. The whole house had gone dead. She moved cautiously toward the stairs. That's when she saw it. A shape, tall, wrong, moving smoothly past the hallway mirror. Its limbs bent like they weren't built for this world. It made a clicking sound like bones knocking together underwater. She froze halfway down the stairs. A floorboard creaked. The creature's head snapped toward her. She bolted, sprinting back to her room, trying not to scream. She crawled under the bed, pressed herself against the floor, shaking. She could hear it. Footsteps too light to be human, moving toward her room. The door creaked open. A long pause, then a terrible bellowing sound, a deep call that rattled her bones. A shadow passed by the window, and then silence. After what felt like hours, Brinn emerged, trembling. She crept across the hall and shut the front door. Something was on the roof. She heard the steps overhead. The lights flickered again. Her hands shook as she reached for the phone. No dial tone, only a high-pitched screech that cut straight into her head. In the kitchen, the utensils began vibrating, then levitating. A blender turned on by itself. The fridge door flung open and shut, open and shut. She turned to run. The creature was there, blocking her way. It moved closer, more curious than aggressive. It wanted to look at her, to examine. Its face, slick, bulbous, twitching. Its mouth opened sideways. Brinn screamed and shoved it, ran for the door. But it flicked its fingers and the door slammed in her face. It dragged her back with invisible force, lifting her off her feet. She reached for anything, grabbed a broken leg from the coffee table, and when the creature pulled her close, she shoved it straight into its head. The alien dropped, twitching, dead. Brinn collapsed, breathless and wide-eyed, slumping into the corner of her kitchen, hands covered in something not quite blood. She sat there till the light outside changed from black to gray. She didn't sleep. She wrapped the alien's body in a blanket and dragged it to the garage. Tried the phone again. Nothing. Tried the lights. Still out. The car wouldn't start either. Brinn stood outside, numb, the morning sun washing over her face. She looked down at her lawn. More circles. She wasn't alone. And whatever had come, it had already started. Brinn couldn't think. She moved like someone underwater, dragging her body through the thick quiet of a world that no longer made sense. The alien body was in the garage, still wrapped in an old blanket. The lights were out, the phones were dead, and now her car refused to start. Not even a click when she turned the key. She showered, bandaged the wound on her forehead from where the door slammed into her the night before, dressed again in something neutral. She packed a water bottle and her lighter, tucked the paper cutter from her desk into her bag. She didn't know why, just a sense that it might not be over. Her bike was still leaning against the shed. She got on and started pedaling toward town. The sky was too still, the trees too quiet. As she rode, she passed house after house with the same scorched circles in the lawns. Bigger now, deeper. One of them was still smoldering. The mailman's truck lay flipped on its side, half crushed against a telephone pole. No one was inside. She rode faster. Some houses were destroyed, roofs caved in, walls blackened like something had exploded inside. Windows shattered. A dog leash trailed from a fence. the dog nowhere in sight. When Brinn reached town, she headed straight for the police station. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered but held. The front desk was empty. The hall smelled like metal and antiseptic. She stepped through the front doors just as Chief Collins entered from the back. Behind him was Ma's mother. They froze when they saw her. Ma's mother's lip curled. Without a word, she stepped forward and spat in Brinn's face. The spit landed just below her eye. Brinn didn't move. Chief Collins didn't stop her. He just stared at Brinn, his mouth tight, his fists clenched. Then he turned and walked away. Brinn stood still, her heart breaking all over again. She wiped her face slowly, turned around and left. Outside, the sunlight hit her like a slap. Her breath caught, her chest was tightening. She couldn't breathe. Her hands trembled. She stumbled down the sidewalk, clutching her bag like it might keep her grounded. No one helped. She found a bench and collapsed onto it, burying her face in her hands. She wasn't just alone. She was exiled, haunted, cursed. She looked up and saw the bus. It was idling at the stop, engine humming low. The driver stared ahead blankly. Brinn stood, wiped her face, and walked toward it. She didn't care where it was going. Anywhere was better than here. She paid for a ticket and sat by the window. As the bus rolled out of town, she watched the neighborhood blur past. Her house, her neighbors' homes, all of them now branded with those perfect, burning rings. And then she heard it, clicking. A man a few rows up began making the same noise as the creature that had invaded her home. His head jerked slightly to the side. His mouth opened. Inside his throat, something moved, a slick, wriggling shadow. Brinn froze. A woman across the aisle snapped her head around. Her eyes glowed faintly, her neck twisted, and then her mouth opened wide, far too wide. She began to change. Brinn screamed and ducked, crawling between seats as the bus lurched. The driver never turned around. The man with the parasite lunged at her. Brinn kicked backward, scrambling toward the emergency exit. The door wouldn't open. A hand grabbed her ankle. She lashed out with the paper cutter and caught the man across the face. He shrieked, a noise that didn't sound human. As he fell back, she kicked the window hard, again and again, until the glass gave way. She climbed out, cut herself on the way down, and hit the road running. Behind her, the bus swerved. Inside, the passengers screamed, some in pain, some not even human anymore. Brinn didn't look back. She ran all the way to the graveyard. Her legs gave out near a small, overgrown plot, and she collapsed in front of a stone. Ma Collins. It was real. All of it. Ma was dead. Had been for years. The letters, all one-sided. The apologies, unanswered. Brinn had been writing to a memory. She let out a ragged breath. Her hand touched the stone. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." A crack of thunder pulled her head up, but there were no clouds. The sky above the town was turning, slowly, unnaturally, like something huge was pushing through from above. Light shimmered in strange colors. Brinn staggered to her feet and began to run again. Back toward her house, people were standing in their yards, motionless, all of them. Their eyes open, faces blank, palms raised toward the sky. Their mouths parted just slightly, and behind their teeth, something moved. Parasites. All of them. Brinn ran harder. Inside her house, everything was humming again. She bolted the doors, nailed blankets over the windows. She boiled water, grabbed anything that could be used as a weapon: scissors, mop handles, kitchen knives. She locked herself in the basement and waited. The storm above split open. A beam of light tore through her roof, straight down to where she had left the alien's body. It lifted the corpse gently into the air, out of the house, back into the sky. She didn't celebrate. Another creature entered the house. Brinn stayed silent, crouched in the dark, breathing as quietly as she could. It came down to the basement, clicked softly, sniffing the air. Brinn moved between the shelves, her heart slamming in her chest. Then it saw her. She held out a pair of scissors, but they flew from her hand. It stared at her. It noticed something else, a photo she had dropped. Brinn and Ma as little girls, smiling, covered in paint. The alien studied it curiously. Brinn used the distraction to run. Upstairs, another alien attacked, smaller, faster. She threw boiling water in its face. It screamed but didn't stop. She threw pots, pans, whatever she could find. The beam from the ship tore through the kitchen again. One of her pans was caught mid-air and disintegrated. The creature wasn't affected. She fled to the bathroom, fought with a mop. It broke, and she drove the broken end into the creature's chest, slammed the closet door on its head for good measure. Then she jumped out the window and landed in front of something worse. A massive alien, spider-like, horrifying, stood between her and the road. She turned and ran, but a possessed neighbor grabbed her. He dragged her to the creature, who raised a long limb and signaled the ship. The beam came down. Brinn fought back just in time, shoving the man into the beam. It took him instead. She ran. The spider thing followed. She reached her car. It still wouldn't start. The alien came closer. Fuel was leaking from the undercarriage. Brinn lit her lighter and dropped it. The car exploded. The blast knocked her off her feet. The alien was incinerated. Smoke and fire behind her. Brinn stood, gasping, her body shaking. 3 aliens down. No help coming. No one left to save her. And still she was standing. Brinn woke screaming. She sat upright in bed, her hands clawing at her throat. The room was still. No beams of light, no clicking noises, no boiling metal sounds of alien power flooding through the house. Just sunlight sneaking past the curtains, soft and harmless. She touched her face, her chest, her throat. She was fine. Everything was quiet. Downstairs, the house looked like it always had. No scorched furniture, no shattered windows, no bodies. She walked barefoot across the hardwood floor, her breath catching with every step, expecting something to lurch at her from behind the curtains. But nothing came. Then she heard the back door open. She froze. Footsteps. And then, hey! It was March, standing there, wearing the same green hoodie she'd loved in middle school, looking alive, looking exactly like she used to before that day by the river. Brinn dropped to her knees, her body crumpled, her face wet with tears before she could even speak. "I'm sorry," she whispered, over and over like a prayer. "I'm so sorry, Ma. I didn't mean to. I didn't." But Ma didn't speak. She just knelt beside her, held her. That's when Brinn knew. This wasn't real. Her hand moved slowly to her throat and pulled out the parasite. It writhed in her palm, a wet, slick creature, desperate to hold on. She dropped it and it began to scurry away, only to be caught instantly in a narrow shaft of light as the ship's beam reached through her ceiling. The parasite lifted up, vanishing into the sky. Brinn ran. She tore through the forest behind her house, her lungs burning, the trees a blur. The ground tilted as the beam followed her, chasing her like a spotlight trying to erase her. She stumbled, fell, kept going. And then she stopped. Standing ahead of her was herself. Another Brinn, identical. Eyes flat, movements sharp, robotic. The doppelganger lunged. Brinn screamed as the knife pierced her stomach. She gasped, tasting blood, everything in her vision tilting. But as the doppelganger tried to push the blade deeper, Brinn reached into her bag and pulled out the paper cutter she'd packed days ago, what felt like a lifetime ago, and sliced it across the thing's neck. The doppelganger spasmed, fell. Brinn collapsed beside it, holding her side, soaked in blood and dirt and fear. But she didn't stop moving. She staggered forward, deeper into the woods, until the beam returned, this time lifting her effortlessly off the ground. Her body went rigid in the air, completely frozen. No matter how much she screamed inside her own head, she couldn't move. Inside the ship, the air was wrong, thick, cold, silent. Brinn stood motionless as the aliens examined her. They didn't speak, didn't need to. One of them stepped forward and lightly tapped her temple with a long, translucent finger. And suddenly, her mind opened. She wasn't in the ship anymore. She was 8 years old again, in Ma's backyard, covered in paint and grinning. Then she was 15, fighting with Ma by the riverbank, tears and rage swirling in her chest. And then, the moment. Ma shoving her, her hand finding a rock, the flash of red, Ma collapsing. Brinn fell to her knees. She felt it all again. The shock, the guilt, the moment where her whole life bent sideways and never came back. She was 16 again, alone in the courtroom, alone at the funeral, alone when the Collins looked through her like she didn't exist. But then someone touched her hand, her younger self, kneeling beside her, eyes wide and kind. Brinn reached out and held her, really held her, the way no one had. And that changed something. The ship faded. The memory faded. The next thing she knew, she was back on Earth, lying in the center of an empty road. The sky above her was alive with color, waves of red and violet and green folding into each other. Light spilled down in quiet ribbons. And Brinn smiled. She got up. She felt lighter, still sore, still bleeding, but lighter. The next morning, Brinn walked through the town like a ghost in her own life. But something had changed. She smiled at her neighbors, and they smiled back. Not just polite nods, real warm smiles, like they saw her for the first time in years. She didn't know if it was real. She didn't know if any of it was real, but it didn't matter. That night, the town threw a party, lights strung between trees, music playing, laughter everywhere. Brinn danced, really danced, with a handsome man who didn't ask about her past. She laughed until her stomach hurt. For the first time, she didn't feel like a ghost. Above them, dozens of alien ships floated in the sky, silent, watching, maintaining the version of reality they'd made, one where Brinn wasn't just forgiven, one where she had forgiven herself. She looked up at the stars, then at the people around her. Her chest didn't ache anymore. The weight she'd carried for years was gone. Brinn was still standing, and this time it felt like she finally belonged.